This is the Business Chat Podcast. Welcome to the Business Chat. I'm your host, Drew Moore, still. And I'm joined today with my guest, Joel Goodman. He's coming to us from Austin, Texas today. What's up, Joel? How you doing, man?
Doing good. Good to talk to you, Drew. It's been a while.
It's been a long while. It's been a long while. Joel and I, it's no secret. Actually, it probably is a secret to everyone listening. Go back. We know one another. We've worked together. And met Joel in Austin. He was kind enough to show me around that crazy city, and it's changed a bunch, dude, since I've been there. So much.
Like if you, I think you passed through briefly, and you probably saw the skyline, and were like, "Why are there a dozen new buildings downtown?" And
yeah, and it's wild. I heard a guy the other day say it's gone from the SMB town to the Fortune 500 kind of thing, and so it's coming from all sides, and good or bad, it's changed, and we've changed, my friend, and we're aging, and it's just the forces of nature at work. Joel is the higher education expert. He's my guest here in this Industry Pros series. Joel founded and is currently principal at Bravery Media. Bravery propels higher education toward its potential, and we'll bookend this again at the end of the episode and link all of Joel's LinkedIn and everything else you need to know about Bravery and Joel. Joel, you're not based particularly in Austin, Texas, in the sense that, like with Suited and with other groups, you're fully decentralized. I'm hearing they call it now, right? You guys are fully remote.
Yep, that's right. I mean, until recently, it was pretty much me and a whole bunch of subcontractors. And just this year, because business has been great, we've been able to bring on 2 full-time employees, and one of them is in Delaware and one of them is in Minnesota. And so, like, we're kind of just blanketing the United States, I think, in terms of like where our folks are at. But it's worked really well all of these years, and it's working just as well with a couple of people that are full-time with me.
Man, that's awesome. No, and that structure is becoming more and more popular. Folks watch and listen and know all about having a team of pros that are a blend of contractors and on the team, and that kind of thing. Well, before we go any further, per our shtick and our tradition around here, Joel, you go first. What are you drinking today, my friend?
I am drinking the Prodigal Pilsner from one of my favorite Austin breweries called Lazarus Brewing. They're about to open their second location, but honestly, I've been frequenting them since a couple days before they opened because I joined at the soft open and did some networking work for them. And they're all my friends. The whole staff there, fantastic. And so if you're ever in Austin, it's worth a stop into Lazarus for some tacos and some really, really good beer.
Man. Yeah, I remember you were one of those guys that buy the beer mug. It's on the mug. You walk in, they know you on nickname basis or do a little salute. And
oh, yeah. Well, and probably even more than that, but yes.
Yeah. You know how much beer you drink when you walk in with a friend and they'll go, Joel, what's up? Same here. Well, recently relocated, man. Mine's not as exciting because I remember Lazarus and I have favorites back home in California, home in quotes. But Michigan's, arms are open wide with when it comes to hoppy beverages, all kinds, actually. I've got today a Mykiss IPA by Black Rocks Brewing. Finally made it up there this last week. It's in Michigan's Upper Peninsula in Marquette, Michigan. So that's way up in the UP. Check them out, and we'll link these breweries later. And as folks have asked before what the point of this is, and their answer is there's none. I enjoy craft drinks, folks that roast coffee, brew beer, distill, liquors of different kinds, kombucha. We just like to give a nod to our local drinks. So Joel, let's do our virtual cheers, my friend.
Salud.
And welcome to the show once again. Well, like I said, in introducing you, folks don't want to hear me. They're here to hear you. I got a lot of questions, though, for you, my friend. I mean, Bravery, so it says on your website, and I'll just read that off. And again, you guys can visit bravery.co to understand more about their distinctives and what Joel and what his team do. But they're a higher education website design and digital strategy studio. They solve big challenges facing institutions of higher learning using data, insight, and humanity. Glad to hear you use data, by the way. Data-driven. I'm teasing. No, it's great. And those are all great buzzwords, and I think that's really great. Now I would say, so okay, you're the expert. You're the thought leader in the space. Talk to me just high level as I've got these questions kind of lined up for you. At what does that mean in layman's terms? Someone's listening to this going, well, what do you mean you help us with digital strategy? And I get the website part. Maybe just give kind of a little, soapbox on, hey, here's what it looks like. Here's the scenario we typically find ourselves in.
Yeah. So in the US, there's something like I want to say something like 600 colleges and universities, starting from like community colleges going all the way up to the 4-year Ivies. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot. And if you think in terms of marketing, like how do you differentiate yourself when, there's another college that's, 2 cities over and maybe doesn't cost as much as you and probably
Right, right.
offers, a business degree like everyone does. So we are kind of in the business, and especially recently since the pandemic, we've been taking on these research and strategy projects where we go through, in most cases, and audit a university or college's website. We're looking at things like speed. We're looking at
Mm-hmm.
conversion rate optimization. We're looking at the user experience, looking at general aesthetics, all the typical stuff that you'd get with a website redesign.
Sure.
And then we're comparing that against a bunch of data that we have from being in this industry for 10 years
Mm.
and making
Got it.
recommendations. And our typical engagement ends up giving an institution what we call website strategy guide. That's essentially a distillation of all the stuff that we found as we were looking at their site, and then a roadmap to fixing that. So if there's a
Got it.
problem, this is how you're going to solve it. Or if you're doing something great, cool, we're going to congratulate you and we're going to say keep doing that. And if you need help, we can help implement that
Sure,
stuff.
sure.
So it all starts with research, and then more and more as we're working with people doing a website redesign or we're trying not to build a lot of websites anymore because everyone wants to do something on WordPress and it's just not as great as it could be.
Yeah.
We are looking to have or looking to develop these kind of longer term partnerships with institutions where, so I mean, like the reality of it, right? And we'll talk about this later probably as we get into kind of the current state of higher ed. But the reality is that every industry is bleeding staff. People are leaving. People are going on to get paid better in other industries. And the same is true for higher ed. And so we've seen in the last couple of years where a university will lose most of its development staff or will lose most of its design staff or even just general content strategy and marketing. And they're going off to other industries, and it makes sense. Higher ed, you don't get into working in higher ed for the pay. That's never ever been said in the entire industry for as long as it's been around. And
you just made about 100 people just slowly nod and smile and go, yes, he knows our space. Yeah.
Right. And so like where we're trying to position ourselves is an agency that can fill in those gaps. So, the truth of the matter is that even with those people leaving, most schools weren't properly staffed anyway to do the marketing that they needed to do. And so that's a combination of things like not being able to pay enough money,
Right.
not having the expertise in house to know who to hire.
Yes.
And so we're working to develop these longer term partnerships with institutions where they can outsource the technical operations and infrastructure of their web practice.
Right.
And we in turn take that data that we start with, that research that we start with, and start building in research feedback loops into how your website's performing, how people are interacting with it.
Very
and
cool.
then come back and tell you, not just at the end of a website strategy guide, but on a monthly, maybe even weekly basis, depending on what's happening, exactly what we're seeing with your website and how to address it if there's a problem. And then we can go further and actually take care of it for those institutions. And so the idea is that I think this is a better fit for probably like smaller, medium-sized institutions, maybe not like the big state schools that have funded these giant, decentralized organizations. But we're really looking at how can we give the marketing departments as much information as they need to make proper marketing decisions, because they're the experts in marketing. And we are just kind of then collaborating with them on how to implement and how to make those things work. So they have more data than they've ever had before, all for the cost of a couple of full-time employees rather than like the 7 full-time employees that they really need to do that work properly and be competitive.
Yeah, and sure. And in the private space where I spend most of my time, it's totally analogous, right? A lot of folks, I think the hard pill to swallow for you business owners listening is really you've got your 10%, high value activity you should be focusing on. Joel would probably agree with me to say that's enrollment and that's education, not necessarily on understanding web developers and good copywriters. And it's almost impossible for any SMB. And I'm hearing from you, the midsize who, they're struggling right now and they're looking how to pivot. the last thing they need is to be having 30 hours a week consumed by human resources conversations where
Of course.
they should focus on their experts. So, dude,
It comes down to core competencies, right? Like
right.
like if
Yeah.
and that's the main thing. Like a university, like you said, the primary job of a college or university is to
Yeah.
educate. There are a lot of different things that fall under that, and I have a lot of ideas for how to make that better. But why would web design and web development be a core competency of an educational institution? Like, it
Sure.
serves a marketing function, but also, if you can't afford to fund those positions to the level that you need to have the quality of developer or designer
Correct.
or UX strategist or data analyst or any of those things, why are you hiring mediocre people? Why not go after like fractional marketing services?
I love it, man. You're getting me a little too excited about that conversation that's close to the belt. Well, man, there's so much we could talk about. I mean, we're watching not just quiet quitting, but kids very different. Lack of enrollment, kids dropping out. A lot of this just kind of friction, and I think ruptures happening at the beginning of higher ed, in the middle, and at the end. And I think you guys are sitting at such an interesting seat as you've been watching this. When I met you, you'd been in this. So,
Yeah.
well, yeah. And I don't. This is for you, Joel, to say, like, how many years have you been doing this? Even predating Bravery. When would you say I started really analyzing higher ed as an individual?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've worked in the industry for, I think it's 16 years at this point. So my first college job, and they're now a university, but at the time they were a college, was about a year after graduating from undergrad. And so I think I started in 2007. I guess it was less than a year, about 8 months after. So
okay, yeah, you launched right in, and that's kind of where we're transitioning right into the story. So you come out of university. I I know some of your friends. I know you were something of a hip rocker and a cool guy for a while. But as you said, hey, I need a job, and started working into this. What was the idea for Bravery, for an agency with fractional individuals as consulting services? The first idea, just kind of give us the story of what led you to today. What led to the inception of Bravery?
Yeah, so I mean, my whole background is so my undergrad degree was media promotions. What I wanted to do was go into the record industry. I wanted to market bands. I wanted to do all that.
Yes.
Had an internship at an indie label, ran a music festival for about 7 years.
Right.
Like all kinds of random stuff that doesn't seem super connected to what I do today. And I coming out of school, I really thought I was going to be working for a promotion company, doing festival promotions basically, and that fell through. So I ended up working at Old Navy, for about 8 months,
Hey,
doing the retail thing, which is funny because my wife worked at Gap in the same mall just down the hall from me, and she actually got a better discount at Old Navy than I did. But Gap did pay our bills for a couple of years, well, for 8 months there, I guess. And
side note, that's a great sitcom. That's a great bit right there for a pilot.
Right.
Sorry, I'm writing that down because I'm just trying to get all those ideas. Keep going. All right.
But it was that time. It was the first recession. I mean, not the first recession, but the first recession in recent memory. Right around end of 2006, going into 2007, and I just couldn't find a job, and so I saw a position open up at my undergrad alma mater, Greenville, now University, Greenville College at the time. And it was for an assistant director of public relations role. And I thought, I can do that. I got a communication background. Like, sure, why not? Might as well just go do it. My wife can finish her degree. Like, we'll just make that happen. So got that job and slowly morphed. And actually, not even slowly. I think it's probably like 6 or 7 months into it. There was we saw a need for someone to take over content on the website. We were going through a redesign. I had worked with the other web person on the team to figure out what CMS we were going to move to. We had done the whole implementation, but we needed someone to start working on content and working through that process. And so I took over as web content coordinator. Ooh. And that eventually turned into me doing everything web related for the college.
Wait, you're saying you wore multiple hats in a higher ed job?
I mean,
am I hearing you correctly?
other duties as assigned.
Yes.
And so I ended up working at that college for, I think it was 2.5 years. And I saw a lot of the same things that we're seeing in the industry today. Like, I wasn't paid very well. I didn't have any room to like move up really. there was a whole bunch of other turmoil. I mean, we look at higher ed right now, and there's all kinds of layoffs that have been happening due to the pandemic and everything else that was happening. The same thing was happening in 2007, 2008, 2009. And I eventually followed my senior vice president who had left up to Trinity International University in the North Chicago suburbs, and did the same thing for about double the pay, but still not, at least by the end I had double the pay, but it still wasn't, a lot of money,
Right.
Especially in Chicagoland. But I did basically the same thing, procured another CMS. I was getting a master's degree at the same time, just practically killed myself, just overworking, getting burnt out. And like, it was a sort of thing where I had taken on a project to launch, I think it was 8 websites, like redesign, relaunch 8 websites in 6 months while working on my master's degree.
Yeah.
And trying to have a relationship with my wife, and any other time, and it was just awful. I mean, just the worst. And I learned a lot. Like, I've now gone through, I think it's 9 or at that point I'd gone through like 9 redesigns of institutional websites. I learned a lot about working with people, the importance of like developing these relationships across campus and that sort of a thing. And it worked out, I suppose. I got to the point again where I just, I didn't feel like I had anywhere to go. Didn't feel like there was any place to move up. I kind of felt like I'd done everything for that institution that I possibly could. And I was just, apart from being burnt out, I was just exhausted from having to fight for the most basic, obvious things. Like, I can't, there's too many of them to really talk about, but like,
we're cut from the same cloth, dude. I got you. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's just stuff that should, oh yeah, you want to boost enrollment? Okay, well, we should shorten the inquiry form on the website. Wow, we really need to have like these 20 fields. And I still run into this today in higher ed, but it's, I mean, you're just, maybe you're just weeding out the people that you don't want because they're not willing to sit and fill out a 20 question, survey essentially to get someone to call them back. But it's something not helping the volume of inquiries that you have.
If you're looking for volume, that's not helping. No.
Yeah, exactly. So it just, I needed a way out. And so I needed something else. And I finished my master's degree. I got a master's in media studies from the New School in New York. Did that all online, which was also a learning experience. I mean, figuratively and literally. But I learned a lot about what not to do in online education as far as the user experience goes.
Right.
And I've taken that with me a lot of places. But when I knew I was graduating, my wife and I sat down and kind of looked at the landscape and said, all right, let's leave. We don't need to be here. I had enough freelance work, enough connections in higher ed that I felt like I could step out on my own and start my own thing. And we looked around in, this was 2012, and my wife hopped on Google and searched, where are the young people moving? And Austin, Texas turned up. Surprise.
Right.
And it turned out, actually, I had a friend from grad school who we had bonded over how terrible the experience was, which is not exactly what you want to, you really want to bond
commiserate
over.
Together. Yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Right.
So she had taken a job with a startup here, and they need some contract design work. I was like, I can do that. So I had my first client. It paid, more a week than I was making at my higher ed job for, I think at that point I was doing 30 hours a week and making, a little bit more than what I made full time at the university.
It was an upgrade, man. You gave yourself an upgrade. Absolutely.
Yeah. And, and I took control over my job and, my situation. And I know it's not entrepreneurship's not for everyone. I get that. I think more people could be entrepreneurs and they just don't realize it and
sure.
maybe have a little bit more fear than I do going into something like that.
Yeah.
But so that's what we did, and it worked out. It worked out well. We moved to Austin. I started Bravery. It started as Bravery Transmedia because I was out of grad school and had to use other buzzwords.
Yeah.
And just started going, doing the same thing I'd always done. I was going to the same conferences. I was maintaining the same relationships and just taking on kind of smaller jobs here and there. And 10 years later, we've already 3x our biggest year ever in revenue,
It's
and
phenomenal, man. Congratulations. That's great.
thanks,
Yeah.
grown 300% this year in terms
Yep.
of staffing, and it's been great. And I think we're doing work now that's uh like hopefully more meaningful or having a bigger impact than the work that I was doing when I first started out. And that's really been the whole goal with this.
Well, and let's talk about that. That's
Yeah.
you're teeing yourself up, man. You're making my job super easy because that's exactly what I wanted to get to was, and thank you, by the way, that your story we could have a whole other episode on because I think it is the sitcom. I love that you and your wife in the mall with the two Gap and Old Navy job. That's just I didn't know that, dude. That's too funny.
It was in West Virginia and apparently was the highest volume store in the whole
in West
region.
Virginia. Oh my goodness,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Woo! You can hear just the fiddles playing. You're going to the mall.
I got
dude.
I got other stories about that job, but
all right. Well, after the recording, I gotta
pod. Yeah.
pick your brain on those, man. But I mean, for those of you listening too that are in the staffing space, you're in the middle of higher education. Like what Joel and myself, it's about him today. Our stories, it's a classic kind of, if you were to generally make a heat map bell curve of those of us that came out with a degree in a thing, or like myself didn't.
Yeah.
And either way you spin it, we all just watch the world change. Not that it isn't now at a different exponential rate, but I feel like we're settling into these new kind of rails, so to speak, and new verticals. But entire industries right before you and I were collapsing, being reinvented from just on the distribution, digital internet. The interwebs were having an effect right in front of us, and we could feel it. Nobody was really writing about it because no one really understood what was happening, and you're a product of that. And again, for folks interested in working with Joel and Bravery, you're working with a guy that's got some years and experience without the cynicism toward it. We've had conversation after conversation about things you mentioned, right? The 20 field form on your site. For those of you that have that, shame on you. I'm kidding. But those kind of things Joel understands and has empathy and sympathy for the struggles, but he's a fun guy and a disarming guy to come in and kind of explain, hey, if you trust us, we can help with these problems. But that's kind of what I want to talk about. I noticed you talk a lot about of all the things you could talk about Bravery, right? You guys are right at the fulcrum of the data. I mentioned that earlier, tongue in cheek, but you really are. You're seeing the data scream at you guys that you're like, people aren't in love with campuses, and COVID didn't help that. And so you mentioned the term hospitable design, and that's a new one for me. Is that a Bravery Media term? And what is that? Why does it matter? And let's talk about hospitable design for a moment.
Yeah, it's something that I coined. I spoke at a conference in Canada, and they asked me to keynote, and so I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And I'd been thinking about this idea of taking lessons from the hospitality industry because I mean, Drew, you and I both like going, like frequenting bars and restaurants and experiencing just all of it, and like I've spent a lot of time cultivating relationships with people that work in the service industry here. I mean, actually growing up, my dad worked for a hotel corporation that his uncle owned. Like I kind of grew up with hospitality in my blood. And so hospitable design is really, I think it's kind of an extension of user experience or more of an umbrella that I think contains all of these different ideas about user-centered design, user-centered experiences and things like that. And it gets into how we can actually practice some of it. And so my friend Ron Bronson, who is an amazing human being, has been talking about this concept that he coined called consequence design, and it's basically looking at all the different interactions that we have in the world and starting to break them down into the various consequences that they have. And a lot of this gets at inaccessible content, inaccessible experiences, negative experiences. What some people call dark patterns, and we're trying not to call it that anymore, but that whole idea term. Of like, it's awful. But these, so he calls them hostile patterns, which I think is one, not racist, and two, actually probably a little bit more painful to the people that put them in place, because I don't think anyone really wants to be hostile towards their their users, right? But even down to like, in a major city, when you're getting on a train and you've got to get a train ticket from a train kiosk, like the amount of time it takes to do it, how confusing the menus are, the frustration that goes into just doing something that should be so simple is kind of how he focuses on consequence design.
Okay.
And so hospitable design related to that is, how do we fix those things? Like, here's a framework for putting this into action. And a lot of it comes down to, these principles of hospitality that we see every day in interactions that we have in restaurants and bars, in department stores and whatever, in hotels.
Yeah, absolutely.
It starts with looking at your user, the human on the other side of the screen that you're going to be interacting with,
Mm-hmm.
and not coming at them with any presupposed agenda, with any sort of bias, and trying to accommodate them in whatever way you possibly can. And so, like, this sounds like a lot of accessibility design and that kind of work, and that is definitely a part of it.
Sure.
But I think it even comes down to like how you develop the actual complete experience of it. So, even apart from typical accessibility stuff where it's, alt tags on images and making sure you've got proper ARIA labels and all the technical stuff that goes into it.
Right.
What about how fast your website is? For someone that lives in a rural area, are they able to have the same experience that someone that lives in the big city and has,
Sure.
like, I'm sitting here in Austin, I've got a gigabit internet connection. So nothing really phases that. But someone that's on a 3G cell phone, out in the sticks, and
West Virginia,
3G,
right now they're at that gap you used to work at. Yes.
Right.
Old Navy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We saw these stories during the pandemic, like the students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds that didn't have an internet connection at home. They were going to McDonald's parking lots and trying to use the McDonald's Wi-Fi in order to access their online classes and like actually just do the stuff that they're required to do.
Sure.
How do we address that, and how are people thinking about those things? It's just a small part of what we're looking at with hospitable design. It's this idea of affordance, of taking the person into account first when you're designing, and then making sure that you are providing safety and comfort and like all the things that you like. And it becomes an extension of someone's brand when you can do it well.
So you're basically, you're branding, you're coining a phrase for UX in higher ed.
Yeah, a certain style of UX, like a UX framework, basically.
Yeah, and I love that because the way you put it, I think really, what a great closing line, that you're considering the individual first. And isn't that exactly what hospitality they've been teaching us all along? Before there was the internet, being greeted. Can you find the parking lot? Can you find the building? Is there room in the lobby to wait while you can't get a seat? And what's that experience like? And it is interesting that you're kind of focusing on that as an experience, because I feel like you're tapping into some of the core emotional reasons. Those of you in higher ed actually trying to boost enrollment, listen in on this. Like, it sounds like that could be kind of what you're saying without, again, it's not being hypercritical, but the fact that you've had to coin, and you have coined the phrase hospitable design, kind of implies it's a little inhospitable when you guys come across it, intentionally or not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think going back to Ron Bronson, the consequence of a lot of the design decisions that are made on the web is this inhospitable nature, or that hostility, as he would put it. So, inhospitable is a little bit softer, but like that idea that, a user experience is not just about, how technically quick and simple you can make things, but also like what is the feeling, the emotion, as you said, that connection that someone makes with your brand.
Sure.
As demonstrated through your experience design. I don't know that we think that way. I think there's it's too easy to err on the side of only mass conversion rate optimization, or only very bloated, someone thought this was pretty but also didn't take into account any of the actual users. They just wanted a drone video on their homepage, which no one's really doing anymore. But a few years ago, it was like every university site is just a campus drone video, and it made the site slow. Like, so it's balancing that and listening to your actual users. And so, like, as I was talking about this whole like research and feedback and data loop that we're trying to build into these relationships with institutions, is built on this idea of hospitable design, where the only way that you can really further your hospitality practice is to understand who your customers are, who your users are, who are the people that are interacting with your website, your brand, whatever, and take into account their needs, their backgrounds. And the only way to find that out is to ask them, or observe who they are.
I mean, I feel as though from the time I've kind of observed, been able to watch you grow your business, and we've had some nice conversations and just kind of haphazard chatting. Hey, Joel, what's happening this week, this month? And you and I'd go a year, and I mean, reach out. But every time I talk to you, I could see, uniquely, you had this like you just have a love for higher ed like I haven't seen anyone have. And I don't know if that makes you uncomfortable to point out, but I could see you just kind of hurt for him. You'd go, man, Drew, this
Yeah,
campus, and I visit them, and it's just gorgeous dorms and these professors, and they're turning out some of the top da da da. You're like, but people don't know about it because the
yeah.
site doesn't load, or this form is cumbersome, or this thing. And I would watch you like actually get passionate about the problem. And I think that's so for folks listening in that space that are like, yeah, maybe that's me. Like, what would you recommend, bravery or not, if you can entertain the thought just for a moment, like what's something they could do to even start to do a little of their own homework? Because I know engaging a group
Yeah,
of your depth, of your specificity for an audit is comprehensive, it's intense,
sure.
and it should
Yeah.
be. What can they be doing just to do some gut check stuff? Is there anything you would refer them to, or just some homework 1, 2, 3s? I'm putting you on the spot, man. This is not scripted.
Yeah.
Just
Well, so much like that passion, I think, of mine, and I mean we have it in our tagline. It's the thing that hurts me the most is wasted potential. Like, I mean, in anything, it
yeah,
can be, it's higher ed is where I've decided to kind of like root myself in as an industry, but
sure.
it's this idea of colleges and universities have so much potential,
Hmm.
but they don't know how to harness it. And so they always kind of fizzle when they get to a place where they could make really, really big effect. Right.
Mm,
And so I think like the first step is recognizing that like your school has way more potential than you're currently, actually practicing. So like figure out what that
yeah.
potential is. Like look at where you could be. And then the second thing, it's there are a lot of tools out there for doing an audit on your website and
Yeah.
figuring out like is it accessible, or figuring out how fast it is. You can go to, I mean, a lot of stuff that we do in our website strategy guide is stuff that everyone could do. I think our difference is that we've got the system down, and then we are building in insights around it. And so if you've got people in
Hmm.
house that can run a page speed test across your site and can parse that data that's coming back, cool, do it in house. Like go to,
Yeah.
Google's got theirs. Like there's tons out there. um and I think third, accessibility is a huge issue. And I think in higher ed especially, we kind of center around this, oh, I don't want to get sued, I don't want to have
Hmm.
all these legal complications and have to pay out money. And like, okay, valid. However, however, if you just want to be good to people, that should be reason enough. Like you're
Sure.
leaving money on the table. Like, I mean, if you want cold hard cash realization of that, it's like when your website's slow, when your website doesn't take into account people with disabilities that may need a screen reader, or have poor eyesight and just need a higher contrast color scheme on your homepage.
Hmm.
You're basically telling them, we don't care about you, we don't care about your money, we don't want you at our institution. I mean,
Sure.
that's like the brutal, honest truth about it.
Right.
But it's not looked at that way. It's, oh, we really don't want to have a lawsuit on our hands. Like, you know what? If that student isn't worth the $20,000 a year in tuition that you get, like, I mean, come on, like that's a huge value. Like
Sure.
you're leaving that cash on the table
Yeah.
by disrespecting them. And I think that's part of the crux of hospitality, and hospitable design is just baselining everything on respect. And so do an audit, do a gut check on what you have. Like,
Hmm.
are the things that you say, the things that your content communicates, the way that your website's built, showing respect for anyone, for, well, not anyone, for everyone that hits your site?
Yeah.
Or are there places where you can improve that?
Yeah. And you're making some really strong points. And I think in general, what we're seeing is that a lot of this is unintentional, but it's a little late for that now. At this point,
Yeah,
ADA compliance, just from the high level you're seeing on, auto parts stores websites. So I think for a
right.
lot of you guys in higher ed, just look around a little bit is what Joel's trying to say. It doesn't require an engagement with bravery, but you made a really good point. I think this is what I wanted to highlight as I unashamedly handpicked all you guys on this topical series, because I do want to plug what you're doing, which is really unique. You all are coming in and, like you said before, not trying to in-house bloat bravery with things that you can consult and then in a custom manner walk with them and go, yeah, let's find the best
Yeah.
photo, video, visual lifestyle treatment for you in
Yeah.
Virginia, in Kentucky, in Tennessee, in California. And what we're going to do is be your Jedi Knights of just guiding the conversation. I mean, I know no matter the space, a lot of business owners and a lot of decision makers are hearing a ton of noise. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I think what you can offer, and maybe this is where we start to wrap a little, is just I think you guys come in uniquely helping them to navigate all those distractions, because it's like you said, the guy's going, you need a drone video. You need the little
Right.
handicap man on your site. And that's kind of all they break it down as, because it's what you do, versus a consultant saying, let's back up and talk about why you exist and all that kind of thing. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, and the best thing about having a data centered approach is, there are so many people in kind of the sub management level, or maybe even like lower management levels in higher ed, that know exactly what needs to be done, but they're being pushed up against vice presidents and senior vice presidents and deans, and
Yeah.
honestly even schools where faculty have too much power, like that sort of thing, and they can't really get those things done. It's what I experienced
Sure.
in my past jobs, and I had to fight hard to get my stuff listened to, right? And so, like, the nice thing about having data from from an agency like Bravery, or from anyone that does similar stuff like that, is it gives you backup. Like, it's just not your opinion anymore. It's
Right.
what you know to be true. And one, like, internally, like, it validates you, right? So you feel better because you were right and you knew you were right.
Sure.
But now you've got a third party that's come in and said, well, here's the data to back up why you were right, and here's what you can do to
Right.
fix it. And we're all about making our clients look good. Like, I mean, the
Yeah.
people we work with directly at institutions, I want them to look great within their communities. Like,
It's awesome.
I don't want them, like, if they want to refer people back to Bravery, that's cool. I don't really care about that. I want them to look really, really good,
Yeah.
because I don't know, I care about people, I guess, is really what it is.
Yeah.
I don't
We're
care so much
in
about,
marketing, we're hairstylists, right? And we're there
yeah,
to definitely would love the referral and stuff, but we want to make sure you walk out and you're seeing the ROI and that they look good and feel good about it. It's funny. I
yeah,
was reading your case study on National University System, and it's what you've been saying the whole time. With a group like that, you're able to come in and say, hey, you guys can pull in and hopefully parse some of your own data, but we're able to be a little bit of that third party
yeah,
check. And no matter who you staff as a higher education organization in any enterprise, this is kind of what's unique about what Joel does, you guys, is he's able to go bring us what you know, because you
yeah,
know a lot that we don't. We're Bravery. We're not in your day to day. So show us what you guys are struggling with. Show
yep,
us where you see, because a lot of these groups are watching people bounce off the application page. They get to the chat widget and they bail for no reason. And Joel's group's able to come in because they're looking at multiple universities. You all are looking at what you look at. And that's
oh
what you
yeah,
should do. And I think that's something I've noticed in my time in business and in working with you, is there will never be a replacement for that impartial, at least if you can believe that, third party
yeah,
that's objectively going, hey, we over here, we're looking at 15 other instances. So we bring with us knowledge of how we've helped them. And you guys
yeah.
are not going to internally, those of you listening in the higher ed space, you just won't have the ability to bring every great idea.
Well, Drew, and I think this is an important point for any business owner too. Like, if you are only stuck within your bubble and sphere of influence,
Mm-hmm.
you can only do so much. Like, it's always important to have some sort of outside voice, whether that's, a trusted friend who, like a mentor sort of person, or like currently, we're working with a strategy and operations firm that also some friends of mine own here in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And they've helped to just kind of solidify and look at things, or, reinforce stuff that I knew in some cases, but also point out things that I hadn't noticed. But
Yeah.
there are things that we just don't see when we're in the minutia
Yeah.
of the everyday, and we're just kind of carrying on. And I think that's the trap that a lot of institutions fall into. I think a lot of businesses fall into that in general. It's, not having that outside perspective to help change your mind. And
Sure.
it's crucial to any sort of progress you can make.
It's great. And it's a great wrap up point on hospitable design and how someone can even, begin to approach that, is, again, understand that at the end of your own internal analysis, you can only do so much. You're looking at your own whiteboard, your own shoelaces. And so bringing in somebody
Yeah.
else, and it's just the humility we all need to have in business, whether that's higher ed, private or public, small startup in the garage with a Shopify store, or, a SMB that's plateaued, understanding where to pivot. you should put a price on the consulting. Absolutely. But it's almost priceless to have somebody that's focused in a space like Joel and like Bravery and higher education, where generalists in marketing will do what they do, and they'll say, sign up for HubSpot and get the drone video and get the cool things.
And it's cheaper, but it's not necessarily going to fit what you need. It's not going to actually fulfill your needs. So
and the needs is that's another great kind of pivoting point, is we should start to close this out for folks. But so the state of higher ed, Joel, where it's at today, I don't want to speak to what it is. I see things like the next guy and the consumer, and those folks, watching and listening to this episode are going, hey, this, Drew and Joel are avoiding the elephant in the room. Higher ed's dying, man. No one's enrolling. So I don't know that that's true. I know that you've spoken to me and you've written about the challenges in enrollment, the change the pandemic brought. But in your own words, what is the state of higher ed right now? Just in like a phrase, right? Is it stuck? Is it in fact dying? Is it just in need of just revitalization? Like, what's your assessment from a very high level?
I don't think it's dying. I don't think higher ed's ever going to go away. I think
I don't either.
There's a fair amount of conversation out there. There are ed tech VCs that want to spin this message of higher ed going away because they want to just capitalize on the amount of money, because there's a lot of money that goes through higher ed.
Sure.
There's a media narrative, every once in a while about the state of higher ed and how it's not worthwhile. And I think like those have a very real effect on public perception of the industry, that a college degree isn't worth it anymore. At the same time, this shift toward trade only education only goes so far.
Correct. I couldn't agree more.
And you look at more institutions, they're getting rid of liberal arts programs and that sort of a thing. And for some institutions, maybe that's the right thing to do. Like from a longevity standpoint, a sustainability standpoint, maybe that's right for them. But I think for society at large, when we don't teach people the critical thinking skills that come through in things like liberal arts programs, you don't have anyone that's going to be an entrepreneur. You don't have people that can figure out what, the next big product is, or develop a new humanitarian think tank, or do these things that really actually change the world. You get people that know how to weld, or you get people that know how to code something.
Sure.
And you get the random outlier that is motivated to take that skill and turn it into something else. But you're not really generating this base of thinkers. You're generating this base of doers. And so if you don't have a combination of both, we just get stuck as a civilization. So I think internally in higher ed, I think higher ed is stuck. I think the data.
Can I say that I'm glad you said that? Is that weird to say I'm glad? Because I really did want to throw that at you. I'm like, he doesn't see this coming. This is a little bit rude. Well, it's a little bit broad, right? The state of higher ed. My goodness, it's a very complex conversation that deserves.
And enrollment's not down everywhere. It is in some places and not in other places. And and we don't really know exactly why that is. I mean, I have ideas. I think a lot of it's around messaging and marketing and the type of stuff that Bravery's trying to fix. Enrollment's down at a lot of the people that we're working with right now. They've brought us in because their enrollment's down and they're trying to fix it, because they've realized that they got stuck in this status quo situation for the last 10, 15, 20 years when it comes to their web and digital marketing. And they're realizing they can't compete. And, that's I think what's important to kind of remember. Higher ed's not going to be disrupted. It's already been disrupted. The structures need to change. I have my own podcast on higher ed marketing and people can listen to. And we had a conversation about this with someone just a couple of weeks ago. And, it's this structure that we're not, the way that the org chart is situated in higher ed is so old school.
Right.
It's an old monolithic industry with tons of bureaucracy that needs to be fixed, but we're stuck because of that. So it's not even really it's not a revitalization or things that need to happen. It's just someone needs to make some hard choices and modernize how the business structures are set up. And look at a lot of that yet.
Yeah, and look at the music industry in a very different way, yet oddly similar. Everyone was like, "There's so much talent. There's 12 guys in the world that know the connection to get the deal, and that's all stuck." And it's the ivory tower scenario. Well, now that all toppled down, and everyone got what they wanted. And and I'm the optimist going, look, you're lazy to say, there's no great art or music. It's the opposite. There's never been more amazing poets, writers, singers, artists, just nobody's getting paid. And so the label is back, and you're seeing it kind of go from being decentralized, and now everyone's looking at each other like, are you going to go first? And the hard decisions of realizing, oh, I guess to monetize this. So now you're getting that swing back to those structures. It's just a little more broken up. And I don't know is the human race that will ever get away from getting, as you said, stuck. And for periods, whether it's pandemics, it really just knocked down 5 dominoes in the period that it would have taken 10 years in 1 year.
That's exactly.
It accelerated what was inevitable. And that's good to hear you throw in kind of the optimism, saying there's nothing that needs to be reinvented or architecturally.
No one's ever called me optimistic. No one's ever called me optimistic.
You're not that grizzly, Joel. I've known you for a while. And that's what I was saying before. Your passion for this is your optimism. Your optimism is saying, I can come, my team can come and see the diamond, but it's covered in a bunch of mud. And if you guys would have a little humility to let us just kind of rinse off some of that mud, we can help people see what you do, see the kind of humans you turn out. And I want to just make one more comment, and I normally don't go this long and cut you all off, but it's a really good point. The micro trade only, well, that's understandable, kind of extreme position. Mike himself, being a guy from higher ed and was in media news, would never say, let's just mushroom cloud higher ed. So all of you hearing that, try to have a little bit, as Joel would call it, media literacy when you're seeing some of this just kind of hyped nonsense that education needs to just go away from the higher ed private university standpoint. It just couldn't be further from the truth. And I agree, we're going to miss. And just like the music industry, when we said, well, we want to get rid of all this structure. And we said, all right, you have what you want. And now people with 40 billion plays on Spotify can't rent an apartment. And so, and I'm not in favor of what was going on before. Don't misread that. But I'm saying in the same way, everyone's going, well, let's just dismantle everything. And that is poison. And I think just dismantling. And so, Joel's your advocate, guys, in higher ed. He's not looking to come in and dismantle you and tell you how it's terrible. They want to see you succeed, but you just got to get out of your own way. And you and I, Joel, in our organizations have to drink our own Kool-Aid, right? We have to have outside consultants go, hey, this is going to sting a little, Drew, but this landing page is just kind of stupid. Like, okay, of course, let's address it. Sure. Well, great, man. I mean, that there's so much more. I kind of want to have a part 2 to this, because education in general as a topic is, it gets an eye roll from people. Higher ed, it's misunderstood. As a guy not from that side of the aisle, I'm utterly fascinated now at the ripe age of 40, going, I think I missed out on what it was. I think I'd be that guy, go back to school, and all these kids are going, who's this fuddy-duddy? I'm like, now I'm actually going, wow, that university looks awesome, and that experience. So that's the state of higher ed. Joel has so much more he can say, you guys, and will. And he mentioned, and I was going to bookend this, so get out of my way, Joel. I'm hosting this thing, man. Come on. Thought Feeder podcast, you guys. We'll link Thought Feeder. For those of you in the space, not in the space, attending university, thinking about it, your tenured professors, your adjunct, whatever your place is in that wheel, it's an incredibly tuned in podcast. I personally listened to a dozen episodes, and it's inside. It's shop talk. It's for those of you that know the space, because it's marketing, it's digital, it's the culture of higher ed. But man, if you want to hear some honesty and some empathy about those of you that work in it, and some smarts, check out Thought Feeder. Yeah. Joel Goodman was my guest today. Joel, they can check you out on braverymedia.co. What's coming next for Bravery? What can people check out other than Thought Feeder?
Oh boy. Well, we're on Twitter at Bravery Media. I'm on Twitter at Joel Goodman. I'm at Joel Goodman pretty much everywhere. You can find Bravery on LinkedIn too. We're hosting these. If you're going to be at a higher ed conference, we're hosting these pizza parties to celebrate our 10th birthday, and they'll probably go into next year, just because who doesn't want to have a pizza party? But it's called Higher Ed Pizza, so you can check out highered.pizza. That is an actual URL that you can go to on the internet, and it'll tell you what the next dates are, where we're going to be for that. But we'd love to see you at an event, and if you are going to be at a conference, we're probably going to be there. So if we are, say hey to me or anyone from the Bravery team.
Yeah. Tell him you heard him on the Hippies podcast that does it all wrong. He's trying to get it together. No. Yeah. Well, dude, if you're in Detroit, hit me up. And when I'm in Austin next time, I'm going to meet you at Lazarus. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right, Joel. Thanks so much. Take care, brother.
Yeah.
All right.